Quite honestly, this has already been a mind-blowing week when it came to backstage news as well as in-ring stuff for both WWE and AEW. But this morning really hit hard because there was an announcement made that R-Truth will not have his contract renewed with the WWE. And it just came out that there is another star that is also set to leave the company because their contract will not be renewed. But we'll get into that closer to the end of the show because it creates another question that is honestly something that I think we all need to start thinking about, us that are WWE fans. Guys, what's going on? Travis Fowler Harkrider is back here again with another edition of Tights and Turnbuckles. Thank you so much for understanding some complications last week. Personal stuff came up and I was not able to record the episode, but I'm glad I didn't because everything that went on when it came to the events last week, like the in-ring events, as well as what's gone on behind the scenes over the last 7 to 8 days, has actually been quite crazy. So I don't want to waste too much time. Let's go ahead and hop right into it because the first thing we're going to talk about is the go-home edition for Double or Nothing on AEW real quick, specifically the Hangman Adam Page and Will Ospreay promo that they did. I gotta say, that's some of the best promo work that I've seen from AEW all year long. And honestly, I have to agree with some sentiments that I've seen that AEW as of late has been putting on some very, very good wrestling products. Like I'm talking about when it comes to both in-ring as well as putting out a weekly show that's very entertaining. They're doing a very good job of that. And I gotta say, it's refreshing because it does feel like we're finally getting to a point where AEW is starting to feel a little bit like its old self and find a new middle ground between being the sports-like alternative as well as mixing a little bit of the drama that most of the Western world and the primary American audience has become accustomed to with professional wrestling. Because you can find a good balance for both. I said once before, I think WCW had that, and I think AEW is now starting to understand how they can accomplish that same feat. So that promo between the two of them is exactly what you need to establish two top baby faces in your company, and they did so very well, which led to the great matchup that was done at Double or Nothing in the main event. Man, I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it because it was so good. It was that good that you had to witness it to really understand it. And honestly, it was a very, very, very good edition of, again, telling a story with the super athleticism that you see out of AEW, because AEW, that's what they're known for. They like being that sports-like alternative, and I think they did just fantastic with Double or Nothing. And of all things, the shock win, in my opinion, of Hangman Adam Page for the Owen Hart tournament on the men's side actually was very, very, very surprising. Honestly, though, I actually wasn't mad. I kind of like the idea of Moxley and Hangman for All In Texas. And I think there is a lot of good story that you can tell here. And we saw that this past week on the Fallout with the Dynamite episode. I love that they are incorporating Swerve into this. Ospreay trying to play peacemaker between these two, trying to say, hey, let's bring our talents together to go against the Death Riders because they are such a huge, huge thorn in all of our sides. Here's a good way that we can all take them out in one fell swoop and, in Ospreay's words, save AEW from the Death Riders that we've all had to suffer through essentially since August, September of last year. I think we can see a really good story for this to conclude at All In. Also, the 6-man tag. That is what it is. The Anarchy in the Arena. I guess I shouldn't skip over it. Paragon won that match. I actually want to get to something here in just a second, but I just want to run through my own personal perspectives of this whole card because I do feel like this Double or Nothing was a bit rushed. And what I mean by that is it really didn't feel like it was a special event, not in my eyes at least. The 6-man tag match that saw Paragon defeat the Don Callis family. Okay, cool. All right. Anarchy in the Arena was great. It is what it always is. It's that wild, crazy stuff. I have to say, I'm still not a fan of the play one repetitive song for like 5+ minutes, if not close to 10. I did like, though, how Omega shut off the original song and had Bodies by Drowning Pool come on. That was really cool. And I love how he's like alternative 2000s rock. And I kind of had a feeling that's exactly what was going to come on, and it did. Very fun matchup. Give it up to them both teams, that is, and a very entertaining output. It could be, as somebody called, the best Anarchy in the Arena to date. I don't know necessarily about that. They've all been good, especially if you incorporate, the Stadium Stampede, where how this whole thing started, which that was the original concept. Of course, once arenas started opening back up, they changed it to Anarchy in the Arena, and I think that was a great shift for the name of the match, and it fits wonderfully. The next matchup, Toni Storm against Mina. It was a good match, very good match. I didn't have any issues with it. It was a wrestling match. Then you had Speedball Mike Bailey and Okada put on a good match for the Continental Championship. Legitimately, very good matchup. Then you had FTR taking on Daniel Garcia and Nigel McGuinness. This was a feud that was mainly built up on Collision, but I did know a little bit about it. Stokely Hathaway is accompanying FTR in this rejuvenated heel run that they're doing. It was a okay tag match as well. It is what it is. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it, strictly just because it's not one of those matches that I really think should have been on the card. But I'll talk about that in just a moment. Mercedes Moné and Jamie Hayter in the finals of the Female Owen Hart Cup tournament. I can't really say I was surprised. Mercedes won. The match, I felt, went a little too long. Just my own personal opinion. They did a good match still. I don't know. I think it just went a little bit longer than what it should have. And, it is what it is. Then you had a stretcher match with Ricochet and Mark Briscoe. Again, I'll have my opinions on this momentarily. I said before I thought it was weird amongst a couple of my friends that this is a stretcher match. That's normally the finality of a feud. This feud had only been going on for about a month or so, and I really don't know how else to put it. It's just like, all right, this is what we're gonna get out of it. It is what it is. Hurt Syndicate retain the tag titles over Dustin Rhodes and Sammy Guevara. I almost forgot about that match, the Sons of Texas. That was actually a decent tag match too. I still have my own feelings on the Hurt Syndicate, but I think they're doing this for the reasons that I am already suspecting, which will be eventually to bring in Cedric Alexander to replace MJF, but that time has not come yet, but I feel like we're going to get there. Anyway, I really am starting to feel, and apparently a lot of the boys in the AEW locker room reportedly are feeling this way as well. The special events, the pay-per-views, whatever you want to refer to them as, they go a little too long. Going 4 to 5 hours per pay-per-view, that's a little much. Even the UFC gets finished usually within a 2.5, 3 hour time slot. They're usually slotted for 3. So if they get done sooner, that's even better for them. But even UFC pay-per-views don't take that long to do what they want to do. And there's a lot of matches that were on this card. I think 3 in particular that come right to mind that should not even have been on the card, which was cited as some of the reasons why these pay-per-views go longer than what they should. What are some of those matches? Well, let's be honest about some of them. The 6-man tag match with Paragon and Don Callis family. Nobody really cares about that. Should have put it on 0 hour. The Ricochet Mark Briscoe stretcher match. If you wanted to have the two of them wrestle, just have a straight up match and have that also main event 0 hour. The feud had only been going on a month. The stretcher match stipulation was honestly dumb. Not going to even say any other word other than that. And honestly, you could make an argument as to any of the tag matches, the 2 main ones, the FTR and Daniel Garcia and Nigel McGuinness match. You could argue it didn't need to be on the show, but honestly, I think with what they did on Collision to build it, it was more than appropriate for the pay-per-view. But I don't think the Hurt Syndicate against the Sons of Texas was really that much of a pay-per-view matchup. That could have been a main event for a Dynamite, honestly. At least that's, in my opinion, what you could have utilized it better for. And then you could argue that the Mike Bailey-Okada match, as good as it was, really didn't need to be on the pay-per-view either. That could have been a Dynamite main event. You know, you could have used these matches to kind of build up your weekly shows. Could have been a Collision main event, since that's where it was mainly done. I think that that's something that AEW needs to think about when it comes to doing their cards, their special events, pay-per-view cards. I think that's something they need to keep in mind, and maybe even consider shortening that down. So that way it's a smaller card, and you can use some of these matches that you might want to throw on the pay-per-view, use them as main events for your weekly shows to help hype your weekly shows. I think that would be a better solution instead of doing this large format of a card. Because, by the way, this upcoming week is Fyter Fest, and it's a special 4-hour event. Live TV. That's insane for a weekly show, but that's what we're getting this week. So it'll be interesting to see what they pull off with this. Then let's move over to NXT Battleground real quick. I was debating where we should go next, but let's go ahead and get the results for Battleground out of the way. Stephanie Vaquer and Jordynne Grace had an amazing matchup. Loved it very much. And honestly, I am not surprised that both these women are being called up to the main roster, which we'll talk about more momentarily. Sol Ruca and Kalani Jordan went out there, and this has got to be, I think, their best match to date with each other. They've had several before. As a matter of fact, they've had one for the NXT Women's North American Championship once before. I believe it was during Kalani's first reign with that title, since she was the inaugural champion, and they are very much an acrobatic matchup. They do a lot of the flippy high fly stuff that you see very accustomed with AEW. They do it in their matches, and I am not going to brag on it because y'all have heard my sense when it comes to that. I feel like there is more selling that needs to be done with those, because as Kevin Nash even said, he doesn't see a lot of people selling, but they register the hit. And that's the difference, is you can register it, but you really also need to start selling more of it in order for it to be effective in wrestling. But I digress. We're not going to talk about that today. Great matchup between those two. It was a fun opening matchup nonetheless as well. Obafemi, in a very surprising good matchup with Miles Bourne, retains the NXT Championship. But like I said, very entertaining matchup. Miles Bourne, I think, is somebody we're going to need to keep our eyes on for the upcoming future of NXT, because it feels like we're going to have a shift for NXT coming up. So I think he could be a figurehead for that NXT brand after his performance that he pulled out with Obafemi. Guy is fluid as could be, honestly, and he's still green as well. So that's a great prospect to have a pretty good career looking ahead. Hank and Tank teaming up with Josh Briggs to take on the Calling. There is a match. Great. We saw them win. Good going on them, but honestly, nothing really spectacular in that matchup. Tony D'Angelo against Stax. It was more of a story matchup, which admittedly, I didn't get a chance to watch all of it in one section just because I had to take care of some things during that matchup. But from what I saw, it was a good straight by numbers matchup, but it wasn't anything spectacular either. So I'll give that matchup kind of the same regards as a lot of people, where it was just there. It was an average matchup. Honestly, you probably could have had it main event at NXT, but I understand why they put it on Battleground. It's one of those matches that deserved it. It just didn't live up to the hype that I think they were expecting it to be. And then the shock of the week, or at least what we thought when it came to in-ring stuff, at the very least, maybe it still holds up, but it definitely was the least shocking thing that took place this past week. Still, nonetheless, very historic, as we saw Trick Williams win the TNA Championship off of Joe Hendry. I was just as surprised as anybody else to see this take place. Who would have thought in the year of our Lord, 2025, we would see not only TNA and NXT working together, but the TNA Championship on a technically WWE contracted wrestler and on the NXT brand coming out on NXT this past week wearing the championship. Man, it's insane. It's absolutely insane to see what has transpired with NXT and TNA with this partnership. But now we move on to Against All Odds, where they have announced it will be the formerly known as Elias, but now maybe it's actually his other brother, because I still feel like that family has a lot more people that we haven't seen. But anyway, Elijah is up on deck, number one contender for the TNA Championship, and he will get his opportunity against who actually ever wins the upcoming TNA title match this Tuesday on NXT between Trick Williams and Mike Santana, who showed up and showed out on NXT this week in a very, very good debut for WWE TV. Man, just overall, it was a good show. Battleground was also a very good show, and despite what anybody wants to say, NXT does put on great cards, and this one was just as good. But speaking of NXT TV, 2 title changes, 2 in the same episode. The opening matchup, Ethan Page and Ricky Saints for the NXT North American Championship. I'll get it right. Ethan Page dethroning Ricky Saints already and has become the NXT North American Champion. But that was not all, because in the main event, Stephanie Vaquer, the NXT Women's Champion, who has looked nothing but strong and dominant, took on JC Jane, the rock star of Fatal Influence. And I've been a JC Jane fan for quite a while, ever since I first saw her in the Toxic Attraction faction. And man, I gotta say, as I was shocked as anybody, but very happy nonetheless. JC Jane beats Stephanie Vaquer, but with some help from Fatal Influence, and becomes the NXT Women's Champion. In a very shocking finish, we found out why that was the case, which we'll talk about here in just a minute. But yeah, JC Jane, new NXT Women's Champion, unbelievable, but still great matchup. I gotta give it to both ladies, and Jane deserves it. Despite what any online people want to say, JC Jane deserves that NXT title. She's busted her ass down in NXT, from Toxic Attraction to Fatal Influence to having her solo run for a little bit. This girl deserves it. I, again, have been a fan, and I could not be more happy that she has that NXT Women's title. And I do sense eventually we will see Fallon Henley and JC Jane face off for that championship, because I think this is going to be the start of the downfall for Fatal Influence. But now, let's go ahead and move over to some actual news, because it's been crazy here backstage with so much news, especially stuff that's come out today, which, like I said, we'll discuss near the end. But we'll talk about some, WrestleMania news, because it was announced on a live SmackDown with The Rock, nonetheless, stating that WrestleMania was going back to New Orleans for the 3rd time within the last 10, 11 years. But they were going to see WrestleMania 42 this upcoming April. That is not the case now, as it has been moved, and while we still have yet to have an announcement as to where WrestleMania is going to end up, it will not be New Orleans at the Caesar Dome. No, the rumored place, back to Las Vegas for a 2nd year in a row, as it looks like TKO executives kind of want to make WrestleMania a little bit of a destination event, and potentially are going to look at having Las Vegas host several WrestleManias going forward. Of course, they do still plan to travel the show to big events, and New Orleans will get a Mania here in the coming future. But next year is not going to be it, and who knows when we'll see WrestleMania travel to another place. Now, that is still just a rumor. Nothing has been confirmed that it is indeed Las Vegas. There are some people who suspect London is still on the table. Maybe that's the case, and I gotta say, if that is the case, I would be all for WrestleMania in London. They deserve it over there. European fans are absolutely crazy. We've seen it with the Paris events in WWE over the last couple years, plus the UK is just so creative and they love their professional wrestling. So I hope that actually is more of the reality as opposed to Las Vegas. But we'll have to wait and see, as no formal announcement has been made, so all of us are going to still be left wondering where Mania goes at this current time. Then, Saturday night's main event, honestly, there's not a whole lot I want to discuss about it, because it was a paint-by-numbers situation. Of course, the big surprise was Bronson Reed returning to join forces with Seth Rollins, Braun Breaker, and Paul Heyman, and now it looks like that trio with Paul Heyman, because I don't want to call it a foursome, even though Heyman is indeed the talker for the group, the I guess, as people have said, he's like the Ric Flair of Evolution. I think of him more as Paul Heyman back when he had the Dangerous Alliance in WCW. So I'm still thinking we might be able to add at least a tag team or a woman to this faction, but as it stands right now, I'm still good if we even have it as just these four. Heyman, Rollins, Reed, and Breaker. That's a good team, and I actually look forward to seeing what happens from this point. As we saw on Monday, they got great heat. Really am looking forward to seeing what goes on with that faction. Drew McIntyre and Damian Priest finally paid off their feud, with Priest defeating McIntyre in a steel cage, but now it looks as if Drew McIntyre is going to take some well-deserved time away. Some people question why he wasn't put into the Rollins faction, but maybe this is why. He wants to take some time to himself because he's earned it. He's put in a lot of time and work over the last year, and I think this is good. He deserves to step away, and I'm glad he's going to get a chance to recover. John Cena beats R-Truth in a very fun matchup. Nobody expected Truth to win, but it was a great matchup that had people wondering, is Cena starting to question his own tactics and motivations since turning heel, as we thought he was going to hit Truth with the title, but he had a sudden attack of conscience. At least that's what it looked like, before he hit the low blow and the FU on R-Truth to defeat Truth and walk out of Saturday night's main event with a W. But it wouldn't be the last time we'd see him, as we would see Cena get involved in the Logan Paul-Jey Uso world title matchup. And just when it looked like Cena was going to cost Jey Uso, a returning Cody Rhodes came back and helped Jey Uso against Paul and Cena to set up Money in the Bank's tag team matchup. Good Lord, Logan Paul and John Cena taking on Jey Uso and Cody Rhodes. You know, that's going to be a interesting matchup. We'll have some thoughts on Money in the Bank next week, because that is going to be when we'll record the next show, because Money in the Bank is next weekend, and I do look forward to seeing that. And even though it's reported that I guess Triple H isn't a fan of Money in the Bank, I am, and I know a lot of people are, so hopefully it sticks around. I don't think it will go anywhere, but, you know, WWE's been surprising us, and they did so again today, so it wouldn't be any shock if they eventually get rid of this Money in the Bank concept, but hopefully that's not the case. That's this whole situation from Saturday night's main event of Paul and Cena taking on Cody and Jey. I gotta say, anybody that hates Jey Uso, it's a forced hate, because next to Cody Rhodes, Jey Uso's the biggest babyface in WWE right now. And anybody that doubts the stardom of those two guys, you need to just watch the ovation and pops for both men. You could make an argument Jey is probably more popular than Cody right now. Just the entrance of Jey Uso alone gets people going. SmackDown was no different when he showed up this past Friday night. And man, they are two bona fide stars. Speaking of stars, let's talk about some main roster call-ups, as well as a rumored signing for the WWE. 3 call-ups are suspected imminently for the WWE. One of them has already been confirmed. Stephanie Vaquer is going to be on Monday Night Raws moving forward. Ricky Saints is imminently prepared to move up to the main roster. Where he goes, nobody knows just yet. But also, Jordan Grace will be moving up to the main roster on the SmackDown brand. I think those 2 women's call-ups are great for wrestling, as well as the call-ups of Perez and Julia, each respectively on those shows. Perez on Raw, Julia SmackDown. I think this is awesome. I think it's great that they've got 4 good talents already brought up to help broaden the women's division even more than what it already is, especially when you've got a returning Alexa Bliss, Zelina Vega, and Chelsea Green, as well as Charlotte Flair back, Becky Lynch and Lyra Valkyria as well. The women's division is on fire, and we did have the announcement of the women's pay-per-view exclusive Evolution. Apparently there's some doubt backstage as to how much the company really is caring about that. Some of the women are concerned that they're going to use this potentially going up against a Beyonce concert, as well as some other factors for the Atlanta area at that time as to potential reasons why maybe attendance will be low for this or not have a good turnout for the event. I hope that's not the case. I think it's great that they're doing Evolution 2, and I hope that this is just rumors and that the company really is taking this seriously for a fun show, because with these main roster call-ups of some of these great women's athletes, as well as some of the ones that have already been busting it on WWE TV lately, you have a lot of opportunity to create a great show coming up with Evolution. So hopefully that becomes the case, and I hope WWE is taking the Evolution pay-per-view seriously, contrary to some of the belief backstage. I think there is a little bit of credence that they do, because there is the rumored signing of Mariah May, who apparently has officially signed, at least to the talent agency that has a bunch of WWE stars, namely CM Punk as one of them, to the talent agency. And WWE reportedly was prepared to make a big money offer to Mariah May. It looks like, by all accounts, it was enough to sway her, and she herself has always said that WWE was her dream. So it looks like it's just a matter of when Miss Mariah May shows up on our weekly TV screens. I have been a fan of Mariah May since I followed her back on the UK indie scene before she even went to Stardom in Japan. She has proven how great of a talent she is, both in ring as well as her charisma. So she's going to be a great fit for WWE. I thought she was a great fit for AEW. To me, best women's storyline that I've seen in AEW, Timeless Toni Storm against Mariah May, the Glamour. Phenomenal storytelling and great matchups for both women who went balls to the wall in that Hollywood ending hardcore match. I just cannot wait to see what Mariah May does in the WWE roster. Well, let's talk two more things before we get out of here for the day. Vince McMahon has been in the news for two reasons. One, per Jonathan Coachman on his podcast, he was saying that it sounds like Vince is trying to buy back WWE, and it looks like there may be some proof to that statement, because it was reported that Vince McMahon has started a new entertainment firm called 14th and I, and this is in reference to a location that had to deal with the Capital Wrestling Corporation, the parent company of Vince McMahon Sr.'s WWF, and this looks to be a nod to that. Could this be a sign that Vince McMahon is going to be trying to get back in at least an entertainment play, perhaps in professional wrestling? Could he even be making an attempt to buy back WWE, which people feel like is frivolous as it is, because TKO is not looking to sell the asset, at least that we are aware of, and WWE is not for sale that we know of at this moment. But anything could happen. Anything is quite up for grabs when it comes to changing in the WWE landscape, as we have seen. So I don't know. We're going to keep an eye on this and see where this goes. But yeah, right now, Vince McMahon launching a new firm. I can only wonder what's going to happen next. But finally, let's talk about the sad news. The announcement came from R-Truth himself this morning that he was released by the WWE. It was confirmed by Sean Ross Sapp that many, who myself included, thought this could be a work. No, looks like it is indeed legit, but there is a little bit of a tweak in that. It's not that he is released and gone now, but he has been informed that they are not going to renew his contract going forward. So this is the last bits of time that we'll probably have with R-Truth if we see him again at all. And that's really sad, because he had a great little program here to build up for Saturday night's main event with John Cena, where we got to see a little bit more of a serious side while showing his entertainment side still and his great in-ring ability. And everybody genuinely likes him. And according to what's being said, this took everybody by surprise in the WWE, both roster as well as fans. Roster was completely shook that Truth, who had been looked at as a company guy and a lifelong WWE employee that would be there until he wanted to leave on his terms, being let go. And it was just announced before I recorded this episode that Carlito is announced to also not have his contract renewed when it is up. So two guys who have been quite entertaining in their own ways for the WWE, especially over the last couple of years, both are being let go by WWE. And this has brought up a sad reality that a lot of people have already mentioned since the TKO acquisition of WWE a couple years ago. And now we're really seeing this come to fruition. A lot of people wondered, how is this going to affect business? Because We've already seen the ticket price increase where it looks like they're slowly pricing people, certain people, I should say, out of coming to these WWE events. We've seen them take away house shows, which Coach even said when he heard about the news on R-Truth was now, since they've cut away live events, those house shows where wrestlers were kept on the payroll so they could fill house shows as well. Even if they weren't being used on regular TV, they could still make money that way. Now, you don't need those guys. You don't need that extra staff, if you will, to flood your roster. And your paychecks are, or I'm sorry, at least the bank account running the corporation doesn't need to see as much money go out the door. So it's like he said, you either are a TV performer or you're not needed. At least that's what it's looking like here. And then to have a guy who was universally liked by everybody in the company being let go just like that, it really has people finally seeing that this is no longer a family operated business. This is a corporate WWE ran by a corporation, and it sucks that greed is seemingly taking over this once beloved company. But honestly, we can't thank anybody except Vince McMahon for this. I know people want to try to blame Triple H, but he doesn't have anything to do with any of the booking of such as like venues or who gets cut. Now, he does have a say as it came out in these last releases. He did have a say into who went, who stayed, things like that. But he's not the one making the calls as to who needs to be let go. And it sucks that this is what's happening now. And unfortunately, it looks like this spells a very, very, I guess we should have to say, a dark cloud over the WWE landscape moving forward. Hopefully it's not, but it looks like for the foreseeable future, we're about to see what a corporately ran WWE looks like. And right now, it's not promising. Guys, that's how we're going to leave today. Sorry to be on such a down note, but I want to pass some stuff off to you. What do you guys think about the WWE TKO, I guess ownership of TKO to WWE, and how they are conducting with these releases like R-Truth, Carlito, and just overall with the company itself? Do you think that they do care about the fans, or is it all about the money? Sound off in those comments below. And let me know what you think about AEW. Has AEW been picking up momentum again and getting your trust back? I can say it's been working on me. How about you? Sound off in those comments below, as well as anything else we've talked about and anything else you want to talk about. Make sure you put it in those comments. Also, make sure you are subscribed to our YouTube channel, as well as following us on all of our social medias. I will come back again next week with a new edition of Tights and Turnbuckles. If you haven't already, check out the newly posted My Singles Match special, a YouTube exclusive, where you get to see my very first singles match as a professional wrestler that just took place a couple of weeks back. Check it out. It was a lot of fun, and I hope you enjoy it. And until next time, you guys, I hope you take care, have a great week ahead, and always continue to love pro wrestling.